Welcome to Family Law Talk. Family Law Talk. Presented by Kirk Stange of Stange Law Firm, PC. Stange Law Firm is a multi-state family law firm. Now, here's your host, Kirk Stange.
Welcome to Family Law Talk. We have an interesting topic today. The topic is Goodwill and divorce business valuations. And this episode today is based on an article on our blog, familylawheadquarters.com. And the title of the article is The Importance of Goodwill and Business Valuations. The date of the article is December 6, 2024. So as a follow-up to the episode today, go on over to familylawheadquarters.com and read this article. It'll give you more information on this topic, okay? But let's go ahead and jump on in. When parties are divorcing and there's a business interest, this can very much complicate a divorce. It really can. I mean, the issue is that in dividing marital property and debt, the court's got to know the value of all the marital assets. So if there's a business interest, whether an individual is the majority owner or a minority owner, and if it was formed during marriage, so it's a marital asset, valuating the business can be a big piece in terms of resolving a divorce case, whether it be through settlement, whether it be through trial, because again, you've got to know what the business is worth in order to divide the business itself and other marital assets, all right? So in a good chunk of cases, what ends up happening is, and this would be the litigated cases where the parties don't agree, both parties end up hiring their own business valuator, right? So husband has a business valuator, wife has a business valuator, and these individuals are typically forensic accountants. They have other credentials, almost always, where they have a background and they have some training in terms of doing business valuations. And what you end up seeing in these cases is oftentimes the valuations can be close, but in other cases they can be very much far apart. And then what ends up having to happen is that if the case is tried, the judge is going to have to rely, on one of the business valuators' valuation and find it more credible typically, okay? In settlement, it's possible the parties could go somewhere in the middle, They could reach an agreement that, the valuation is somewhere in the middle between the two valuators' assessment of the value of this business interest. Know this as well, that, sometimes valuations can be very much far apart. Sometimes they can be close, but in a lot of cases, we could be talking six figures or millions of dollars apart in terms of the overall valuation, which could make, again, the case much more complex. Now, to get in the weeds a little bit more, when you're looking at the value of a business interest, what you're typically looking for is what's called the fair market value. So what would a willing buyer in a hypothetical market pay for this business interest? Okay? And so this is where valuation experts can have wildly different opinions. In some cases, business valuators will look at the income streams and they will do the income approach to valuation. In other cases, where there's a lot of assets that the business owns, the business valuator may do the asset approach. Okay, but far more common is what's called the fair market value approach, where what business valuators are looking to find is what would a buyer pay for this business interest, okay? And so then, take this concept of goodwill and how does this translate into business valuations. I would tell, all the listeners, first of all, we're not talking about the store Goodwill, right? We're not talking about the second-hand store where people buy, used items. When we're talking about goodwill, there's two different types that courts differentiate between. All right, the first type is personal goodwill, and this attaches to a particular person who's a key part of the business itself. And, think medical practice where there's a doctor that patients come to see and that, many patients may leave if that doctor departed. Think a law firm where there's a lawyer that the clients particularly are attracted to, they want to have represent them. Okay, and if that lawyer wasn't there, the clients wouldn't come or they might depart. It could be an accounting practice, could be various other types of small businesses where there's a key person that the consumers, the customers trust and know and like and respect. And if that person wasn't there, the customers or the clients wouldn't come or they wouldn't stay. Okay, that's personal goodwill. Contrast that with enterprise goodwill. enterprise goodwill generally occurs with larger corporations with a well-known brand, okay? So think major shoe companies, okay? Think major electronic companies where, it doesn't matter, who is running the corporation. People just know that particular corporation. Think major stores, right? Where lots of individuals maybe don't even know who the CEO of the company is or something like that. Okay, this is enterprise goodwill. These are big corporations. So the bigger the company, the more likely there is to be enterprise goodwill. The smaller the company, the more likely we're talking personal goodwill. Okay, and so how does goodwill work with business valuations? Well, this is really thorny, okay? And it's going to vary based on the state in which your case is located. So for the listeners, definitely speak with a lawyer who's licensed and competent to practice law in your jurisdiction, okay? The reality is some states exclude goodwill from the marital estate, and they don't make it divisible in the divorce itself, okay? Last time I checked, this was 24 states. 19 states do include personal goodwill in the marital estate, okay? So if you're a business owner and the customers and the clients really like you and they come because of you, sort of bad news if you're in one of these states, but the personal goodwill is included, okay? 8 states have no real formal precedent, thus it's really uncertain in these states, what a court may or may not do, okay? But again, it's important to know, are you in a state where goodwill is considered in the marital estate, or whether you're in a state where that's not the case, okay? But the reality is if you're in a state where it is included in the marital estate, what you want to be thinking about is, look, let's suppose the buyer pays very little for the business due to expected losses of repeat customers or specific referrals to the newly formed competing entity. In other words, look, if there's a lot of personal goodwill and this person's going to be departing the company in the divorce, let's say, this can drive down the value of the business because of that individual's specific personal goodwill, right? Again, think a doctor, think a lawyer, think an accountant, think somebody else who's very well known in a business who customers come because of that particular individual, okay? And so in cases where if a person leaves, the price of the business really goes down, then look, personal goodwill is going to be a thing in that divorce, assuming that it's a state where it's included in the marital estate in terms of property and debt division. Okay, so that's a really important piece and something to definitely keep in mind. Okay, in instances where an individual departs the entity too, it's possible that clients leave and go with this individual, right? Or they could be poached and go with this individual. Obviously, this can be thorny and can result in all kinds of various, legal and potential ethical issues. But if somebody departs and the customers are just going to depart with that person, that points to a large amount of personal goodwill, okay? And it could even be loyalty from the other employees, other employees leave and depart and they want to go with this person. Again, in those circumstances, lots of personal goodwill in those circumstances. And again, then it's a circumstance of, how do you value that? And is it included in the marital estate or is it not included in the marital estate? Okay, very important. All right. And so then when you get into arguments about whether or not goodwill should be included in the marital estate for purposes of business valuations, and again, we're talking particularly about that personal goodwill, right? So if one of the divorcing litigants has personal goodwill in the business itself, okay, the common argument for including goodwill in the fair market value is that otherwise the court's really ignoring the contributions of the non-professional spouse to the creation of the professional spouse's business, earning capacity, and career. All right. On the flip end, arguments against including goodwill are that it's highly speculative. It's really hard to put a value to it. It results in inflated values, and it requires that the professional spouse compensate the non-professional spouse for earnings they may never even acquire, okay? So that's what can make it really murky in terms of whether this should be included, or whether it shouldn't be included, or whatnot. But definitely an interesting topic, okay? So again, the topic today is goodwill in business valuations. It's definitely an interesting topic. It's definitely one you want to be thinking about. Again, as a follow-up to the episode today, go on over to familylawheadquarters.com, read the article titled The Importance of Goodwill in Business Valuations. But listen, thanks for tuning in today. Stay tuned to our next episode coming up on Family Law Talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Family Law Talk with Kirk Stange. Visit StangeLawFirm.com for more about today's topic or to put Stange Law Firm to work for your family today. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri or Illinois reviews or approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The information you obtained in this podcast is not, nor is it intended to be, legal advice. You should consult an attorney for advice regarding your individual situation. We invite you to contact us and welcome your calls, letters, and electronic mail. Contacting us does not create an attorney-client relationship. Please do not send any confidential information to us until such time as an attorney-client relationship has been established. Past results afford no guarantee of future results, and every case is different and must be judged on its own merits. Kirk Stange is responsible for the content. Headquarters, Office, 120 South Central Avenue, Suite 450, Clayton, Missouri, 63105. Kirk Stange is licensed in Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas.